Talk about spoiling for a fight. I mean, unless the object of the mugger's ire has been trash-talking him behind his back, then he's just a mean drunk without the excuse of liquor. Well, that's a white-throated sparrow for you. Not only are they bigger than most sparrows, they match their large size with a considerable combative streak. Not that I'm criticizing, though, because when you see these quarrels in super slow-mo, you realize that the over-in-a-blink action of real time has kept you from appreciating what acrobats these birds are. I mean, I didn't know they could take off backwards, twisting as they go, or pirouette in the air, or brandish their claws like weapons. Now, within this quarrelsome species, the white-striped version is more likely to go on the attack than its duller brethren are. You see, these sparrows come in two plumages, the white-striped morph and the tan-striped morph. Or to put it another way, the dazzling and the drab, the brilliant and the blah. Birding books agree that the white stripes are more aggressive, and I bow to their superior knowledge, but I would also say that when I filmed them, I regularly saw the tan stripes bushwhack flockmates without provocation. Now, it's okay to admit it if you dismiss sparrows as generally dingy, nondescript birds. Birders often refer to them as LBJs, little brown jobs. And sure enough, the back on a whitethroat is blotchy sparrow streaking on the top half, merging to plain gray or gray-brown below. His breast is a soft but unmemorable gray, and juveniles have streaked breasts. But half of the whitethroats could justly call the LBJ comment an affront to their beauty. The heads of white-striped morphs sport crisp white and black stripes with cheery yellow lores. A triangular white patch on the throat gives him his name. But if you take all that in-your-face sunshine and smudge it over with some soot, you'll get the less impressive tan-striped version of the species. He's so much more muted that about the best you can say for members of this morph is that some of them are distinctly marked. But other tan morphs are borderline nondescript, hardly more distinguished than those divas of drab female house sparrows. But even though the cocky white-striped morph is the looker in the family, he has no more appeal for the opposite sex than the tan stripes do. That's because the two morphs interbreed, and when they do, they usually pick mates of the opposite color. It's a little like the tendency among humans of extroverts attracting introverts, and vice versa. Each type brings something to the union. In fact, the few white-throated couples that do end up paired with their own color morph fare poorly, because the couples that are both of them white-striped spend way too much time fussing about territory to the detriment of nest-raising duties. And the all-tan couples just aren't aggressive enough to hold a territory. And yet, despite their contentious nature, these birds produce surprisingly soulful, haunting melodies. Besides the usual chipping noises common to sparrows, the whitethroats have a thin, high-pitched monotone of a song. A staccato whistle that somehow manages to sound eerie, as if it ought to drift out of mists and fog. And they haunt the air with that soft whistle round the calendar. Less in December than in April, of course, but they sing in every month. In this early November shot, you can see one of them and hear another whistling its dirge close by. They winter in the States, where we say it sounds like they're singing, "Old Sam Peabody, Peabody, Peabody." When they depart for their northern breeding territory, the song becomes, as they cross the border, "Oh, my sweet Canada, Canada, Canada." Whitethroats are woodland birds, but you can attract them to your yard in winter, even if it's not feasible to squeeze a forest into your boundary lines. They come readily to feeders if you also offer them bushes to hide in, especially if your shrubbery is native flowering plants. The once lovely, now desiccated blooms of goldenrod, liatris, coneflowers, and black-eyed Susans don't look ugly to these seed eaters. They look toasted and tasty. And the birds can snug themselves down in the brittle foliage, hidden enough so that they can let down their guard some and concentrate on pulverizing seed husks with their short, conical, 90-mile-an-hour beaks. Of course, without woods, you're going to get a few whitethroats rather than flocks of them. On that score, we're lucky. We didn't buy our property with flocks of white-throated sparrows specifically in mind, but we did jump at it because it adjoins a stretch of woods. And as it happens, those woods have exactly the elements these sparrows look for. Some kind of watercourse, spring-fed creek, check. Lots of brushy undergrowth, check, 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 check. And a cleared area near the woods. That would be our backyard, so check. The whitethroats are thick in the woods, especially since my husband sawed down all the invasive bush honeysuckle and piled lots of its limbs up, with the whitethroats in mind. They are creatures of the brush pile. There was no need to put up a sign saying whitethroats welcome. The birds not only got the message, they would revise the sign to say, small birds only, Cooper's hawks, keep out. Or maybe, sharp-shinned hawks beware. The fingers of our hideout will snare you and puncture you. Confident that the hawks can read the unwritten sign, the sparrows thread their way into a brush pile and hunker down safely. There's no such thing as a claustrophobic whitethroat. And they can emerge from their twiggy tunnels and hop down into the vines for lunch, constantly kicking backwards to move the leaf litter around so they can expose food on the forest floor. Back in the yard, they supplement their main food, seeds, with berries. The woodland behind our house has plenty of pokeberries, and I assume they sometimes eat those because I know they eat the berries in our yard. I don't see the other sparrows doing that, just the whitethroats. And as far as that goes, they don't eat all that much in the way of berries. Partly, I guess, because they're not very well equipped for it. This seed eater can only gouge bits of chokeberry or beautyberry and nibble with the same stuttering sewing machine pace he'd use on seeds. A robin now, with his long thin beak, can grab and gulp, never bothering to chew, and gobbling up berries almost like popcorn. But if the whitethroat wants the whole berry, he has to wrestle it loose and send it to the ground, where he can nibble on it some more. Besides offering these sparrows the food on native plants, you can throw store-bought seeds on the ground for them too. Pretty much whatever you throw down, they'll eat. They're not picky. They sit back on their bent orange legs and peck away contentedly, occasionally hopping a foot or two, or, like all sparrows, kicking the hop into a higher gear that blurs with their speed. When you slow that blur down, you realize they're sometimes hopping, looking like a racehorse with a jackrabbit in its family tree, or running, or mixing them together. And they often do running head starts when they take off. But of course, if they really have to hightail it somewhere, they skip the preliminaries and just hit the air. The mixed flocks that hang out near our winterberry bushes are constantly hustling into the shrubbery. If they could speak to management, they'd probably complain about where we put the seed. Oh, they're fine with eating it on the ground. These are not treetop birds. You'll seldom see them perch higher than, say, 15 feet. So pecking on the soil suits them. What doesn't suit them is being out in the open. They're used to having cover while they eat. Now, this food is so easy to find that they can't pass it up, but they must feel exposed, because we don't toss the seed under shrubs. Well, that would kind of defeat the purpose. We want to lure them out where we can watch them. So my husband throws the seed near shrubs, far enough away from the bushes so that a local cat couldn't easily ambush the birds, but close enough for them to bolt back to safety, because flocking birds are forever fidgeting and fleeing. Every 10 or 20 seconds they spurt into the shrubbery, like kids touching base in a game of tag, and then immediately start hopping back out. Hard to say what prompts them to whoosh away. In some cases, new arrivals might startle the group. And it often looks like one of them takes to the air and finds the whole flock has joined him. Well, the rest of them have no way to know whether he left in panic or just left. But they know this much: when in doubt, move it. He who thinks too much is hawk food. But when they bolt, if any of the flock members are going to ignore the memo, it will be whitethroats. Now, the house sparrows will scram every one of them, and usually all the Eurasian tree sparrows and juncos will flee too. But half the time, one or two whitethroats will be looking around as the air whirs with departing wings, confirming the danger wasn't real, and then resuming feeding. Now, they may be less skittish than the others, but that doesn't mean they don't get it. They know that sharp-shinned hawks are a very real menace, and that those hundreds of trips into the shrubbery are like air raid drills, so a body won't end up strangled and plucked. One day as I sat in a blind filming the birds, they whooshed away as usual, but then everything got quiet. I swiveled my head to find a Cooper's hawk sitting not 30 feet from me. That last trip into the bushes had not been practice. It had been a very real bombing raid, and they had all eluded the hawk, who proceeded to stalk through the undergrowth, hoping to flush prey. After a few minutes he flew away, but the birds stayed quiet for at least 10 minutes, letting their pulse rate slow down while they waited to see if the bomber would circle back. Besides spreading seed on the ground, there's one more way you can help the whitethroats weather the winter, and that is to offer them bark butter, a bird food available at Wild Birds Unlimited. It's a creamy paste, sort of like peanut butter, that you can spread on tree trunks, but better than peanut butter because it nourishes the birds more. On cold winter days, birds need fat to stoke their tiny furnaces, and lots of them obtain it from suet. But whitethroats miss out on that source of fat because, for some inexplicable reason, they almost never go up on any feeder. It's a shame they won't do that, because getting suet from a feeder would be easier for them than getting bark butter. You can see that the whitethroat's claws don't do a good job of holding them as they stand on vertical trunks. Their feet are adapted for gripping horizontal limbs. Their claws lack the strength to puncture the bark the way a woodpecker's can, so they end up choosing between sliding down the trunk or dashing in for one bite at a time. But they make the effort. Apparently they think bark butter is worth the trouble, even to cleaning up the bits that get dropped off the tree. As the weather warms in April, so that the birds are less desperate for fatty foods, the whitethroats don't need bark butter as much. They start singing more and feeling this irresistible urge to visit Canada. By mid-May here in Missouri, they're gone, but they'll start drifting back again next October. I decided I should mention to my viewers that I've somehow strayed into dangerous territory. Old age. I'm almost 80 years old, and the shock absorbers on this old jalopy I drive are shot. The carburetor's rusted, and I can't find replacement parts. So I'm only posting a new video every couple of months. If you don't want to miss the next one, be sure you've clicked the bell next to the subscribe button.